Hey, what's up, YouTube? Donovan the Smartphone Guy here to do my full review of the ZTE Blade V8 Pro. So this is a phone that I've been using as my primary daily driver for about 3 full weeks. There was a 2-day hiatus where I tried another phone just to do that phone some justice, but for the most part, for the last 3 weeks, this has been my go-to phone, daily driver every day. So yeah, let's talk about whether I think this phone is worth your hard-earned money for $230. And just a quick spoiler alert, 100% yes, it's definitely worth your $230. And I just think for my purposes, I'm going to miss this phone. Unfortunately, I am going to be getting rid of it. I'm going to be selling it, but it's a phone that I don't really want to get rid of, to be honest with you. But in order to review new phones, I can't keep these phones forever. So with that being said, let's talk about what I like and what I maybe think could be improved on the Blade V8 Pro. So let's start out with performance. So I'm going to set the phone to the side for just a second here and show you that this does have the Snapdragon 625 processor, which if you've watched any other reviews, you've probably heard that already. Octa-core 2 gigahertz processor, 3 gigs of RAM. And let's just say that this phone is not only efficient in terms of battery, but the processor works very, very well. So like right now, I do actually have it on some kind of battery saving mode. So there's the smart power, and that really doesn't slow the phone down at all. You're not going to find any slowdowns. I mean, this phone is snappy. That processor on the Snapdragon 625 is just an absolutely fantastic processor in terms of bringing back old apps that you had open previously. And I just have not had any issues with this phone on a daily basis. Just everything about the performance is fantastic. So next thing I want to talk about is, see how that one does. All right, so jumped right into the Bible app there. All right, so with that being said, let's jump into the build quality. So build quality wise, that is something that some people have maybe knocked this phone a little bit on because it doesn't have the metal backing or even like the glass backing. It has this rubberized backing, which personally I actually like. It makes it so that you could almost use this phone without a case. Now, I got this case with it as part of the pre-order deal. But yeah, this phone is one that, because of that rubberized backing, I feel like you could probably use it without a case, and it's built very well. It's not a phone that, I feel like is going to break as soon as you drop it. It has that nice metal chassis, which I think looks really good. Type-C there, fingerprint sensor on the front. And yeah, I just think build quality wise, it's good. It's maybe not the premium look, but I think premium feel. It feels really nice in the hand. And so that I give it definitely 2 thumbs up for as well. So let's talk about the fingerprint sensor now, since I just mentioned that. And the fingerprint sensor on this thing is snappy. Now this is a home button, so it doubles as a home button and a fingerprint sensor. So kind of similar to like what those Samsung phones do. So you do have to actually have it on the lock screen and then just press it down. And the fingerprint sensor works very, very well. It's a very snappy fingerprint sensor, and I haven't really had any issues with it. Now, one thing I will say is that, I pretty much always use my left thumb for it. So when I have tried to use other fingers that I don't use as often, it hasn't been as accurate. So let's see. Yeah, it's okay. So my right thumb's working really well. Okay, so there you see it didn't recognize it for a second there. But for the most part, fingerprint sensor is great. I will say this, that, my preference is to have it on the back, right under the cameras or whatever. But as far as front fingerprint sensors go, this is a great one. Next, let's talk about the screen. So the screen is maybe a slight, I wouldn't give it 5 stars on the screen, maybe like a 4 star. So this is a 1080p screen, but one thing that I think is maybe just a little bit off on this screen, and it's not like a huge knock, but this is the Grand X4, which is also a ZTE phone. And I will say that, for me, when I'm looking at these two phones, the Grand X4 just has a little bit brighter whites. Now, honestly, when I'm looking at this phone, I wouldn't have noticed that. But last night I was kind of using these two phones right next to each other, and I noticed that the Grand X4, which this only has a 720p screen, so definitely not as good as this one, but the whites are whiter on this one, so I kind of like that. So maybe just a very small knock on the Blade V8 Pro. It does get relatively bright. It's not the brightest screen you're ever going to use, but it's also not a super dim screen either. So just something that, something to keep in mind if you really like the bright white screens, that you're not going to get that with this thing. It is an IPS LCD screen. So if you're wanting Super AMOLED, you might have to pick up a different phone. But for the price, again, I think the 1080p is the way to go, just because I just don't think that a 2K display is necessary on a phone. That's just my personal opinion. But I do like the 5.5 inch screen. That for me is a huge plus. Next, let's talk about the camera. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll show you some of the pictures that I've shot with this camera. But I will go ahead and show you just some of the features that it has available. So it will shoot, first of all, in 4K video. I'm going to switch that around. And it does, of course, have that bokeh effect with the pictures. So you got to go up here to dual camera. And in here, you have the bokeh, monocolor, or monochrome. And so here I can go into take a picture of the box there. And then afterwards, in the post-production, I can go ahead and take a look at what I want it to focus on. So you can select here. And then, whoops. See if we can turn that back. All right, well. Let's do it this way. So then I can go ahead and adjust the focal length there. So that aperture setting is really nice. And you can see there that it blurs out everything in the background. Or I can come in here and get more of that background. So you can see how it came out of focus there. But so that does really well. The one knock maybe that I would say about this phone, and it's a slight knock, but the low light camera maybe isn't the best. It's not bad. It's still, for $230, it does not have a budget phone camera, but it doesn't have a premium camera either, if that makes sense. So for me, I like the camera. It could be better, but for $230, I think the camera is darn good. So of course, I should mention also that it does have that dual 13 megapixel camera, which is how you get that dual focusing. And then we have an 8 megapixel camera up front, which takes good selfies. I'm not going to say that they're amazing selfies, but it takes decent selfies. I'm not a selfie shooter, so didn't do a whole lot of those. But again, those pictures will be up. Next, let's talk about the battery life. So battery life is easy. It is easily 5 out of 5 on that one. So battery life, if you can get through this phone in a day, then you use your phone way too often, because I use my phone a lot, and I would finish every day with this phone with at least 30-40% battery. So you're going to get upwards of about 10 hours of screen on time. It is, in terms of battery life, you're just, if you're, like I said, if you're going to get through this phone in a day, you're probably on your phone too much, and you might want to consider changing your priorities, because I use my phones a lot, and I could not get through this phone in a day in terms of battery. So battery life is a huge thumbs up there. Next thing is the software. So you can see obviously that I do not have stock software on here. So we do have the option of a couple different UIs that it has on here. So there is the My Favor UI, and then there's also what they call stock Android. So that's right here. So I can go ahead and go in there, and you can see a little bit of what that looks like. So I just always use Nova Launcher. So it's nothing, against this phone. It's just for me, I'm always using I always switch to Nova Launcher as soon as I get it. Well, after about 3 or 4 days of trying out the stock, I always use Nova Launcher. So the stock UI isn't bad. And in terms of the software, you can see here we got a lot of shortcuts there that are available. It does have NFC, of course. And then if I come up here to the settings, you can see that it does have this frequently used option, which is kind of nice. And then we have these all settings up here. And within the all settings, there are some options. So we can do some gestures with the fingerprint sensor. The ZTE lock is simply like a wallpaper thing. So that's actually the lock screen. So it will go through all these pictures, or you can turn that off. So personally, I turn it off because I just like to have one lock screen wallpaper. Personally, that's just me. The My Pop gives you the option of having a back button here, and also you can change that to a home button, or you can long press it and give you some other options as well. So that is something that and you can move that around onto either side of the screen as well. Just something that they added in there in case one-handed usability, I guess. That's the only reason I can think to use that, but other than that, it's something that I personally don't use. That's why it was off. And then we do have some gestures as well. So the one that I used most is that shake to turn the flashlight on. So it's just a feature that I like to have on my phone. So that's kind of cool. So when you have it on the lock screen, you can go ahead and shake it, and there's your flashlight. Shake it again, turn it off. So real nice feature in my opinion, but yeah. There you go. So settings wise, and in terms of the actual software, it's a pretty light skin. It's certainly not stock Android, but it's close, and there's not a whole lot of bloatware on the phone when you get it. But I like Nova Launcher, so that's what I go with. Now let's talk about the negatives. So first negative, and this is kind of a big one. So for some of you, this could be the deal breaker. So let's go ahead and take a look here. And it says here that it's expandable to 128 gigabytes with an SD card. So in the SIM tray, you have two SIM trays. So there's one for your nano SIM, and the second one can either take a second SIM card or it can take a micro SD. So I have personally not been able to find a way with this ZTE phone to make it so that can be used as internal storage. Now, personally, that's not a deal breaker for me because I don't even fill up the 32 gigs until I throw pictures on there, but I can throw pictures on the SD card. But nowhere have I been able to find that you can use the SD card as internal storage for the phone. So if you're somebody that uses just a ton of apps and a lot of big apps, that might be an issue because basically you're limited to that 32 gigs of onboard storage for your apps. So something to keep in mind if that's something important to you. That could be a deal breaker for some people. For me, it's not. A second thing I want to talk about is the speaker. So I'm going to go ahead and play a song here. Hopefully I don't have it. So it's a bottom firing speaker here. Oh, that was the end of the song. Okay, so that was turned up all the way. What I want to point out is that the speaker just isn't very loud. If you're looking for a speaker that has a lot of volume and you need that, and that's an important feature for you in a phone, this is not the phone for you. It's not a terrible speaker. I mean, in terms of the sound quality, it's not that bad. It's actually pretty good. But if you want a loud one, this is definitely not it. So if you're somebody who uses a lot of speakerphone, probably, again, you might want to consider a different phone, just because the speaker on this one isn't very loud, and so you might have trouble hearing somebody on the other end when you're using speakerphone. So I would say, of the biggest negatives, those are probably the two biggest. Maybe a third negative. This is very, very slight, and I'm going to say this is just barely a negative, and that is the low light camera. It's not a bad low light camera, but it's just not top end. It's not a premium phone when it comes to that. So just something to keep in mind. So is this phone worth the $230? I've already answered that question, but again, I'm going to reiterate that I easily think that this is worth the $230. Definitely worth your purchase. That's obviously my opinion, but I don't think that for too many people, this is going to be a phone that they'll be disappointed at with that price point. So pick it up. Link down here in the description. If you have any questions about the phone, maybe that I didn't address in this review, which, it's a long review, so hopefully I addressed all your questions, but I'm sure I missed something. So if you have any questions, go ahead and leave those down in the comment section. I get to those as soon as I possibly can. And with that, I will see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.